All right, hey everyone. Topic of this video is going to be on why it seems that we really enjoy um other people's suffering and everything. And this is going to be a pretty deep and deep thought and analytical video here. So let's go ahead and get into it. So you imagine um one single person, someone slipping on a wet floor. There's no laugh track. There's just the sound of the fall, and then the camera and everything, and like focuses on the person's face. As they look around embarrassed. That moment, right there, between the fall and the laughter. What happens inside you. You know, um, you know, I believe the Germans, they call it Schadenfreude, which is a German word that sounds exactly as heavy as it feels. But the Germans didn't invent it. Didn't invent it. They just gave a name to something that's been hunting us since we first gathered around fires. So we're going to spend the next few minutes not answering why we enjoy suffering, because that's too easy. We're going to ask something harder. Why does our enjoyment of what does our enjoyment of suffering say about what we're afraid of? Because the laugh isn't the story. The laugh is basically just the system. So winding the clocks back to prehistoric time, early humans hunting, tribal life, competition for food, that type of stuff. 200 years ago, you're standing on a savannah. Food is scarce, danger is everywhere. Your tribe survives or it doesn't. And one day, you see a rival from another group fall. And they break their ankle. They can't, which means they can't hunt, they can't protect their children. And when you see this, your brain doesn't feel sad. It feels strangely enough, it feels relief. And that relief is the seed. And it's not cruelty, it's calculation. Because the universe just handed your tribe an advantage. And your brain, your ancient survival driven brain, rewarded you for noticing. That pulse of dopamine, it's not saying I enjoy pain. It's saying we are safer now. We've just misread the signal for millennia, for over millennia. I'm sorry. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. That survival instinct didn't go away. It just found new targets. The rival tribe became the rival sports team. The competitor for food became the coworker who got the promotion you wanted. The threat became anyone who makes you feel small. So we're not laughing at the fall. We're laughing at the leveling. For one brief moment, the hierarchy collapses, and we are, for that instant, not at the bottom. So that's not entertainment. It's basically just survival masquerading as comedy. All right. But you know what? Let's push further on that. Why do some failures make us laugh while other failures that we see, it makes us weep or cry? Imagine on one side you have a clumsy skateboarder. He falls off his skateboard or whatever. People laugh. But on the right, but on the other side, you see a homeless person stumbles. People look away. The distance is everything. Physical distance, social distance, emotional distance. We laugh at the skateboarder because we see ourselves in them, but from a safe remove. We feel their embarrassment and our relief. The laughter is the exhale. But on the other side, for the person on the street, we don't laugh because their suffering doesn't feel distant. It feels possible, because we know that deep down that if we make mistakes, or we make one massive mistake, we could easily turn into that person right there. Homeless. No money, can't take care of themselves. That's why it's different. So the real question isn't why do we enjoy suffering. It's the real question is how does suffering have to how close does suffering have to get before it stops being funny. And this is why we betray ourselves, because the distance we need to laugh is exactly the same distance we need to ignore, to not act, to scroll past. Schadenfreude isn't a feeling about them. It's a feeling about us. It's the emotional boundary we draw between people who matter and people who don't. When we laugh at a stranger's fall, we're saying, your pain is not my pain. Your world is not my world. And that boundary, that thin, invisible line, is where all the cruelty begins. Now, let's add the aspect of superheroes and stuff into this. Think of Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie from 2002. Think of the Green Goblin. And think to that part of the movie, where he gets Spider-Man and everything. He hits him with that gas that knocks him out and everything. He's got him on that rooftop, and they're having that conversation and everything. This is where he drops that really deep and thought-provoking line. He says, the public, they need a hero. They need someone to look up to. But deep down, they love to see a hero fail, fall, die trying. Sam Raimi's Green Goblin wasn't just a villain. He was a mirror. We build up heroes because we need to believe greatness is possible. But the moment they stand too high, something shifts. Their light becomes a shadow over us like normal everyday people. Their success becomes our inadequacy, and once that happens, we start waiting. We don't just tolerate their fall. We anticipate it. We hunger for it. Not because we hate them, but because their height reminds us of our own depth. Frederick Ness, I don't know how to say his last name, but he wrote about this, and he said, "He who fights monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze too long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." But Nietzsche also said something darker, that the abyss isn't just out there. It's the part of us that needs the hero to fall. Because if they fall, we don't have to climb. We don't have to try. Their failure becomes our permission to stay small, to not try to better ourselves and everything. Whether it could be anything, whether like mentally, physically, working out, financially, stopping all of the unhealthy things that we love doing and everything and stuff, but we know it's not good for us in the long run. Those type of things. Now, the Green Goblin, even though Spider-Man in the Sam Raimi movie, he did ultimately prove Green Goblin wrong with because the people in New York did come to his aid when he was saving Mary Jane and those people in that trolley or whatever it's called and everything. But the Green Goblin was still right in some aspects of what he said. Not about everyone, but about enough of us. There is a part of the human soul that finds comfort in the collapse of the extraordinary, because it proves that no one escapes gravity, not even the ones who seem to fly. And that's the most uncomfortable truth of it all. We we don't just enjoy watching strangers trip on pavement. We enjoy watching icons crumble because their greatness exposes our mediocrity, and their fall, their beautiful, public fall, restores a kind of brutal, unearned quality. All right, and let's discuss, talk about the the twist. The people who feel the most Schadenfreude, they're often the people with the most empathy. In a study from the University of Zurich, researchers found that highly empathetic people experience stronger Schadenfreude, especially when the suffering happened to someone they perceived as unfair. Or, like something like, I think, bringing up like a Dragon Ball Z bridge where, Trunks was like seeing Vegeta um, get beat up by Perfect Cell after letting him achieve his perfect form and everything, after he could have easily, ended the fight, but, his same pride, wouldn't let him and everything. He let it happen, and unfortunately he got beat up by it. And then afterwards, he said, catharsis by proxy, or whatever he said. Um, you know, why do they feel like that? Because they felt the injustice more deeply. They were emotionally invested. So when justice came, even brutal justice, the payoff was enormous. So empathy doesn't protect you from this pleasure. It fuels it. So think about it. Think about that. The very quality we call goodness can become the engine for something darker. Not because we're like outwardly bad people, but because we care so much about fairness that we'll celebrate someone's downfall to restore it. But here's the cost. Every time we enjoy someone's suffering, even justified suffering, even though like it's like painfully obvious that they absolutely 1000% deserve it, we practice a small act of dehumanization. We momentarily forget that they are, like us, a universe of thoughts, fears, and childhood memories. And Hannah Arnett, or however you say her last name, I'm sorry, the political theorist who studied the banality of evil, warned that the most horrific acts don't come from monsters. They come from ordinary people who have slowly, quietly forgotten that the other is fully human. And Schadenfreude, it's that forgetting, rehearsed. So obviously you don't become cruel overnight. You become cruel through one laugh at a time. And so I'll leave all of you with this. Not an answer, but a question. When you laugh at someone's fall, are you celebrating their loss, or are you celebrating your own survival? Are you relieved because they failed, or because you haven't yet? Now listen, we're all failing, all the time. Some of us just happen to be filmed when we do it. There's like plenty of other people failing out there, but they're not filmed when they do it. No one but them, and maybe God Himself only knows that they failed and stuff. The laughter we share is the same laughter that separates us. It's the sound of relief, of justice, of tribe, of all tangled together in a messy human moment. So maybe the question isn't why do we enjoy watching others suffer? Maybe the question is, what are we so afraid of? That we need them to fail so we can feel like we're standing. So, very deep, very thought-provoking. Anyway, I think that's gonna do it for this video. So yeah, thanks for watching.